Hey everyone, I'm so excited for today's tutorial because just look at all of these beautiful fall leaves that I collected. I went for a walk on the trail across the street and I may have gone just a little bit overboard, but I just couldn't help myself. I found so many different leaves. I found maple, sycamore, oak, elm, we've got sweet gum, and even some of these long skinny leaves that might be hickory, but don't quote me on that. The main reason that I collected all of these leaves was to show you the incredible color variations within them. The colors are just so amazing. We've got greens, golden yellows, deep reds, burgundy browns, and even this beautiful red-brown color. These natural variations are exactly why watercolor is just the perfect medium. It lets the colors flow and blend effortlessly, just like they do in nature. So I'm a big believer in using real life references. It helps you notice all those little tiny details to make your painting a little bit more dynamic. So if you can, grab some leaves to use as a reference, but if not, I've taken photos of mine, so don't worry. I will share them with you so you can follow along. In today's tutorial, I think we'll start with some of these longer, skinny leaves and paint them using a loose watercolor technique, which requires no sketching. And then we'll move on to my favorite, the sweet gum leaf. I just love these pointed edges and the beautiful variations inside. And we're gonna sketch this one out and add a little bit more detail. So let's get started. We'll mix up some fall colors and create our loose leaves first. All right, before we get to mixing colors, here's just a quick look of what I'll be using today. So I have my Canson XL watercolor paper. This is just a great affordable option. If you need a watercolor paper, if you're a beginner, it's great to practice on, it's great to paint on. And then I have my Arches 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. This is a better quality, more costly option. You definitely don't need this, but it is a wonderful paper to have. And then we have our Winsor & Newton Professional Series paints in my palette here. We aren't going to be using too many paints today. You need a very limited selection. Yellow, red, burnt sienna, burnt umber, yellow ochre, anything like brown. And then we got our green. So sap green is a great color to use for these type tones of fall leaves. For our brushes, I have a bunch of brushes over here. You don't need all of these, but I just have a range of round sizes. So I have my 10, I have a 6, a 4, and then a 2 for those little details if you want. We also have this dagger brush, which is a really cool brush to use for leaves, and I'll show you how I use this one if you're not familiar. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to take the primary color and add its complementary color to make a nice fall palette if you're not aware of that already. So we're going to start with our red. So I have red deep here, but you can use cadmium red, any kind of red tone that you want. So this is our red deep here. And then I'm going to mix that with a touch of its complementary color, which is green. So we're going to use sap green. So red with a touch of sap green, and let's mix that right over here. So we've got more red and then a touch of that green. And you can add as much as you want to this, but this you want more red than green, but you don't want half and half because then it's going to be too brown. So you can really play with that, but this is just gonna deepen this red right up. So this really beautiful fall shade. You can see right there, just the difference that it makes. And then the opposite of that would be adding more green to red, sap green. So we'll just swatch it here for visuals. Very visual, so if this is helpful, hopefully. So then we have our red here. And then we're gonna add more green and a touch of red to the green to deepen the green up. And it's gonna give us this really beautiful green tone. Look how nice that is. It's just a simple way to mute your colors for fall. And then as we go down the list, we should have probably started with yellow, but we could use a lemon yellow, and the opposite of lemon yellow would be violet, or yellow is violet. So there's the lemon yellow here. And then we want to add some violet to that. So we'll use some dioxazine violet, but we don't want to use too much violet because this can get very gray, like very mucky. So we just want a dot of that to start, and then you can go from there if you want to add more. but right away off the bat, it can get very mucky. So let's just add a tiny bit more, slowly add that in. And this should be deep enough. You can go deeper if you prefer, but you can see right away how muted that lemon yellow gets just from that touch of that complementary color. And of course the opposite would be to add more yellow to the purple. Violet here, and then we can just add a little bit of that yellow in there. And you can see how that muted that out. That's basically what it's doing. It's really muting that tone out. And I know this will drive me nuts. There we go. And then we've got our orange. So if we mix orange with the complementary, and if you don't know, a color wheel is always a nice thing to have. So if you're not sure of complementary, split complementary, this is just a great tool to have if you can. So the opposite of orange, where's our orange here, is blue. So you can spin this and you can see right away that that's blue. We'll add some cobalt blue to our orange. I'll swatch it here. And we just want to put a touch of that cobalt blue there. We don't want to do too much of this again, this one either, because it will get mucky pretty quickly. We just want the ratio of whatever color you're trying to mute to be a little bit more. So right away, that muted that out so beautifully. And then the opposite would be the mostly cobalt blue. Put a decent amount here. And then I'm just going to drop a little bit in there and mix that in. And this can get pretty green quickly, so we want to really make sure again that we're putting a little bit of that color in there to mute it. Look at that, so pretty. And this would be our fall palette here. And then another color to have is burnt sienna in your palette for fall. It's just such a nice color. So we got burnt sienna or burnt umber. Depends on how deep you want to go. You can add red into your burnt sienna, red into your burnt umber, and that's going to give you really nice bright fall colors. So the leaves that I have here haven't even reached their peak here in Georgia, so they're a little bit more muted. But this would be if you're adding some red to that burnt sienna. And then if you want a color this deep like this one's so nice. This is like a raw umber with a touch of red. It's hard to see on camera, but it's just got a nice touch of red in it. Or a sepia if you have, you can mix sepia, whatever, however you say it. Put this with a little bit of red in it, so pretty. And then of course you just have yellow ochre is a nice color to have for a fall palette. It's just off the bat very muted as itself. So yeah, these are the colors that we're going to be working with, and you can mix them however you'd like. So let's start practicing just painting some of our leaves. I think a great leaf type to start with is just using skinny leaves like these, skinny basic shaped leaves like these to begin. And that's really a good way that we can just really get to practicing. So I'm just going to use whatever I have here in my palette. And I'm just going to use, this is a size 6. So this is going to give you that small skinny leaf. And you're just going to use the tip of your brush. Hold your brush on an angle and press down so the belly of the brush opens. And go back to the point. And then you can meet up right at that bottom there and thicken that up if you want. This is just a great way to really practice your leaf shapes. And it's just such a loose, fun way to do that. So let me add a little more green over here with the red color, so it's a little darker on camera. And this created a nice brown color. So you can start by creating that stem as well if you want. Just touch that ever so gently. And then use the tip of that brush, press down, drag, and lift. Same on this side. And you can go for as long as you like, so you can really drag that brush to make that leaf as long as you like it to be. And then if you want to use a larger brush and make it a little bit thicker, we could use a size 10. And I want to mix up a little bit of a red orange. You can mix red and orange together to create a really bright, vibrant color as well. And we can use a larger, ooh, there's more paint in there. So you could use a larger brush, and that actually made a really nice bleed to create a larger petal. And honestly, you could just mix up all of these colors because there's so many different variations. And then if you went the opposite way, you could press down, drag, and lift. Meet back at that point. If you want more of a loose sort of petal, add a little bit in there. You can drag and sort of wiggle your brush, and then you can lift it, and you're going to create this really nice loose effect. What's that? This just makes it really easy to create these types of leaves. Drop some paint on my page, so that's why it makes a great page for practicing. But if you wanted to do leaves that are connected to a stem with multiple leaves on it, you can just create that long stem in the middle there with whatever color that you grab. So we want to do a brown stem, and we can just drag that stem out like this, and then use that brush. And I like to just load different colors onto my brush here to make these different variations. I'm just going to do the same thing with the leaves and just connect them to that stem. And this is sort of like a longer, skinnier. I'm not really copying that one. It's just a fun way to make some loose leaves. And you can do however you want. And while this is still wet, you can drop in some colors into the, so if you want to add some red in there, drop that in. Another way that you can do this is doing wet into wet. So you can use your water, and you could use clean water. This is a little bit dirty. We can make the shape of the leaf. And right now we're just practicing, so these don't have to look beautiful. I'm just showing you a few techniques. So we want this to be sort of glistening. We don't want it to be able to be poured off. So if I were to lift this, we don't want it to roll down the page. We just sort of want a sheen on there. I'm actually putting a little bit more on just so you can see it a little better. And then while this is wet, this is when you can implement the wet into wet method, where you'll just drop in some of these different colors, and it'll make these really pretty bleeds where you don't really have too much control. So I'll put in a little bit of orange into the mix, and that's why I like watercolor is perfect for this. And then maybe we can even add in a tiny bit of green. And just sort of let that blend and do its own sort of magic. Sort of like this leaf has all these little spots in it. And then once that dries, you can go in there and add some more details into it. But this could be a really nice base layer just to get those really beautiful blends. And then if you want, another fun way to do this is adding a little touch of color in your brush to create a two-toned effect. So I'll use some yellow ochre over here. I'll just mix this up. And I want my brush to kind of fully be saturated with this color. And then I'm just gonna dip this into, let's do some green, so some sap green. Mix it up over here. So most of what's in my brush right now is the yellow ochre. And then I'm just gonna do that same shape. Just gonna press down, and then you're gonna see most of that yellow ochre in there, and then some of that green
or vice versa, whatever it decides to do. And this is kind of sort of a muted pairing. So let's do it a little brighter. So let's do a red, a touch of that sap green. Oh, this is a scarlet red, but that's fine. Maybe be able to see the variation a little bit more. So you make a stem and then press down. And then get that green tone in there. It's ever so slight, but let's use a brush like this and then you'll probably be able to see a little bit clearer. So I'm gonna fill my brush up with this red. And then let's do a little bit of green on the tip of this brush. This is our dagger brush. So I'm just going to ever so slightly press down and then drag, and then you can really see the variation with this. Could use a little bit more water in there. I'll do it on this side. I'm gonna flip and do the opposite. You're seeing like different colors in there. So pretty. This is a really fun brush to use and to practice with. I'm gonna do the opposite. I'll load this with a little green. Tap my red in there. Really see the difference. This is a really fun brush to use. I love it. But yeah, these are all different variations, different ways to make your leaves, and you can do them very loosely or roughly, or you can go in, sketch it out, and really create that shape. So like this one we can draw out. I'm gonna draw it out with a pencil and I'm gonna fill it in, but you can always just sketch it out really quick and loosely with your watercolor, just using the tip of that brush to create those sharper points. And you don't have to go crazy. This is sort of a looser style. You just want to make sure that the tips are sharper for this gum. And this would be the base. And this is just a really fun way to kind of get everything out and practice before you go into creating a final look. And then I could just drop in some color in there to create some bleeds and blends. And then do just a little bit of a stem. This is off the page there, but even this, the tips could be a different color. Look at some red. Could drop in some dark on the tips to create some really nice contrast. Really pretty. This one has little dots in it. And then once this dries, you can go back in and put those lines in there. But while it's wet, you can really get those really pretty blends in there. And you could do that with any shape. So any shape of these leaves, which are starting to really dry up really quickly. I thought that they'd stay alive a little bit longer, but look at the blends in this. So pretty. There's green, yellow, this very light burnt sienna-y brown color. But yeah, so that's just a quick practice and a really nice way to make a muted tone palette for fall. All right, so now I'm going to use my Arches watercolor cold press paper and I'm going to sketch out one of my leaves, and then I'm going to really go into layering on this page. I have my leaves out here. I pressed them a little bit so that they would be flat, and I have this sweet gum. Unfortunately, the stem fell off, but we're gonna sketch this one out, and you can literally actually trace this if you want, or you can sketch it out. I'm gonna sketch it out ever so lightly on this page, and why not just trace it since we have it right like that. I think I will sharpen the tips on the ones that have fallen off. I think we'll be able to fit in a few other leaves on this side, so I'm just going to sketch it out like this, and you can really see with having this, there are little serrated edges there, and this is just a guideline for us. And if you don't want to sketch it out, now that we have this point here, I could just go down the center. Like if you don't want to trace it, you can also just go down the center line here and then just meet on the opposite sides and sketch it out like that. And I'm using a very light hand, and it's not perfect in nature, so It's pretty symmetrical, but it's not perfect. So we're just gonna sketch it out ever so lightly. And I kind of like having this to trace, because why not? And then the opposite side, it's going down a little bit. And if you have some leaves, this is just a really fun way to have a reference. And I'll leave a line drawing for you in the description so you can download it and have it once we are finished. Okay, so now I have my leaf shape. And this side I want to just, and then this is going to have just a little stem right here. And then the bottom's going to have a little, now you can make this as long as you want. This one was pretty long actually. So maybe I'll go a little further down. And it can go like, it can go out like straight down, or it can go curved. And now that I have this down, I'm going to use my kneaded eraser, and I'm just going to pick up as much of that pencil as I can, and could just roll it out over it, and just so I can see those lines, but not too dark, because once you put down the paint on top, you're not gonna be able to lift that pencil up. So if you're okay with the pencil being seen through, that's fine too. This isn't going to bother me that much. But now I can see ever so slightly where the pencil marks are. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use water to fill in those lines, and we're going to use a wet into wet method. So my water's a little bit dirty over here, but I don't mind because I am going to be dropping in these different colors. So this one is more of like almost a burgundy. I'm not going to copy it exact, but I'll try my best. So we're just going to fill in the outline with water here. And again, you don't want it to be drenched, but with the cold press, you kind of want to work a little bit quickly. It absorbs it a little bit fast. So I'm just going to fill in these lines here. And it will stay damp for a decent amount of time to work with. But if you want those blends, you definitely want to work a little bit quickly. And I kind of like that it's a little bit tinted, because then I can really see where I'm working. But this is all going to get filled in with color, so I don't really need the white of the paper to stay white. But yeah, having clean water on your desk is always a good thing. Little hair in there. I'm gonna use the tip of that brush to get those sharp points. And I won't really fill in my stem. I'll do that with a dry on wet, with a wet on dry method. Excuse me. All right, so now that we have this base, this is when the fun part starts. So I'm gonna put in my lighter colors first. So I'm gonna use a warm yellow in here. You can use your orange mixed with yellow, whatever you have that's on the yellow side. And I'm just gonna start to drop that into the center. And you can tape down your paper, or if you have a watercolor block, that might be easier. I'm just using a sheet because I had this. And then I wanna drop in some orange in there. And this is gonna look different for everybody. I'm just gonna let those sort of blend together in that center there. I really wanna get those colors in first before I put any darker ones. And I'm just blotting them. And then on the edges, they're really darker. So I'm gonna do a red. And this is when you can add in that green to deepen that red up. Or you can use a burnt umber or burnt sienna to darken that up. Or you can even add in a little bit of violet if you want to get this color here. So I'll mix that also. And look, that made just such a really pretty color. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'll switch to my smaller brush because these tips are very detailed. So I'm just gonna use that red color that I mixed up, and I'm just gonna start to drop it in along the edges and let it sort of blend out. See how it's doing what it wants? And then I will drop in some color over here while that's still damp, so we don't miss that opportunity. And then I want to make sure this really gets in there. So this is dried up a little bit, so let's just wet that. And you can work in sections, so you don't have to work so fast. Over here. Oopsies. And then I want to drop in a little bit of a brighter red in here. And creating all these really pretty blends that you can't really mimic otherwise. And I'm not really doing any of the work, I'm just dropping it in and it's sort of blending out where it wants to go. And I'm just mixing up my colors in my palette, so I don't have too much control. Definitely want to get the edges before it dries. See how I'm just tapping it and then it's sort of spreading out right in here. Go on this side. This one's a little dry here, but I don't mind having a more of a crisp. And again, I'm not trying to really mimic that color too much, but if we want, we can add in different tones. So this is a little bit more of a browner tone over here. Just have fun with colors. Then we can wet this a little bit. So the paper is still damp, but if we want to get those really nice blends. And this has little dots. Then I think I want a little bit more of an orangey tone right in here. Can't decide what colors. I just want to do all of the pretty colors. Just gonna add a little more dampness to this. And this is just our first layer. Once it dries, you can add in your detailed layers, or you can just leave them how they are. I really do like that, like, sort of purpley red tone. So even a alizarin crimson would be a nice color. Give you that almost burgundy on the tips there. Really pretty. I love watercolor. And you can mimic it exactly if you want. I'm not really doing that, as you can tell. I really like the sharp tips though. I want to accentuate a little bit more of a sharper tip. And then if you can see, they do have these little serrated edges there, so you can add that. I'm probably not going to. I kind of like the look that we've got here. Can drop in some lines in the center of the leaves just to establish that sort of first layer base. but you don't have to do this until after. And then I think I'm gonna go in with my burnt sienna just to build up that little stem there. And this is when, if you have a smaller brush, I have a number 2 round brush here, you can use that to really go in and get your finer details. I'm going to use a burnt sienna, just pull that down, and then as I go down I want to add a darker brown to the mix so that they blend together. And you can add some green in there. If it's still alive, it's probably still going to have some green in there, unless it is a you know, just unless it does have a brown stem. But you can just add those little blends in while it's still wet. You could do some lifting. You really see those different blends in there. And then add a little bit more. Add some burnt sienna and mix a little bit of that violet in there to create these little dots that we're seeing while it's still damp. See a little bit more yellow in this one. Now this over here, mine's still a little bit wet. You can always lift while it's wet to also create some really pretty blends. To really lift up because it's still damp. And it's going to show you a little bit more of the white of the paper. All right, while that dries, we can do another type of leaf. Now we don't have to sketch them out. We can do more of like those loose type leaves that we did in the beginning. So I'm not going to even sketch it. I'm just going to use some of this orangey mixture over here that I have. It's like a brownie orange. And we can do something like that. I'll start with this side, and I'm just going to create a stem here. And then I'm just going to press down. On cold press, you need a little bit more water because it doesn't drag as smoothly. I'm just going to press down and lift that up. And the same thing on this side, and this is a smaller brush, so you can use your larger brush. And just create that shape of that leaf. And this could be the base color, and then we can start adding in some of these darker tones. Just drop in some of those blends. And then maybe this one will add in a few little serrated edges there. This is sort of just establishing the base layer. Kind of want a really dark tip here. And same with the stem right here. I want it a little darker. Over here we'll do a little darker. Then I'll start to add that center line in. We have a nice leaf there. And we can do one that has multiple leaves on it. So maybe we'll add one that's a little bit more on the greener side for this one, just because it's so pretty. So a sap green mixture. And I'm just going to use my detailed brush for the stem. And I'm going to use a darker brown for the stem mixed with that sap green. And I'll do one out like this. Going down. And then I'll use my same round brush, and we'll sort of use that sap green mixture over here to create longer leaves. So I'm using from the top to the bottom to that stem to create longer leaf here. And it's coming right out from the stem. So I'm just going to create very long, skinny lines. Can never escape these little hairs. And then maybe mix in a little bit of brown into this one. This one's going up a little bit. And then I can lift up a bit. And you can always drop in some more green. See how it's just making all those really pretty blends. And you can drop in some yellow if you want. This one I kind of want it to be a little bit more free looking. And then I'll put in a little bit more dark green at the tip here. Yeah. Okay, so now that this is a little bit more dry, we can start to add in some more of our little details in there. So I'm gonna mix up some of that dark brown again with some of that red. And I'm just gonna start putting in some of the lines of my leaves because this is a really nice base color. You can also glaze in if these areas here are a little too light for you. You can add some glazing in there, depending on how yours turns out. But for me, I'm fine with this just for the sake of the tutorial. I'm just gonna start adding in some lines. And right here. And then just keep going. And then some over here. See, it's still wet over here because I just touched it, so. And you can make these lighter if you want them not so visible. And then from here, I'm just gonna create some of these. And you can mix up the colors. I guess here, maybe they'll come out, but not meet all the way at the top. This one I'll have to go back in later when it dries again, or you could use if you have a blow dryer or a heat gun to dry that. But yeah, this is just a simple way to make some leaves. You can always glaze and add in some more colors in there. This is more of a looser sort of detailed watercolor style. So if you want, you can go and add in these little lines at the tips. to show that it is serrated, but you don't have to do it every spot. Add in some more darker spots. I just really like the shape of the leaf. I love the colors in the maple leaves. They're so pretty, the green and red. It's like a deep, beautiful red. Just really fun. And then this one has a little bit of brown. Same here. This one, is it dry yet? We'll have to see. Sometimes it's nice when it's not dry and it blends out a little bit more. You can really take your time with this. Now, if you want to use this dagger brush, I'll show you on this paper. I'm gonna load this brush with whatever I have here. I'll do a greener base leaf, and then I'll add a touch of red to the tip of the brush, and we'll see how that looks. I'm going to just press the tip of that brush to the paper and create a stem, and then slowly drag it down. Pull to the side here, and then lift, and you got this really beautiful blend in here. You could use the tip of that to even drop in some more different colors in there. If you want more red over here, it's so pretty. And then you can flip it so it's the opposite way and drag. Really fun way to use this brush. I do need to use this brush a little more. It's a bit of a learning curve, but it's fun once you kind of play around with it. And you can use the tip of the brush to create lines in there. Fill this up with some of this orange color. And put some red in there. Let's see how that looks. Do it again here. So pretty. So we're going this way. Now we want to flip it this way. Hold it as close as you can. And drag that out. Doesn't always work as planned for me, but it is a really cool brush to play around with. Drop in some pretty red in here. Can blend this out a little bit. This one's fun. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would do for my watercolor leaves. You can go on and on and on and practice with all different colors. You can go back in here and create any kind of little spots or blends that you want. Like we can blend this out if you want to put more color in here. Like my personal, the way mine turned out, this could use a little color over here. And then let that dry and then see how you like that, but it's always like back and forth. You can't really control the blends until they're done. But you see how adding that brightness in there is really beautiful. So we can just glaze in any spots like that to add a little bit more vibrancy. So even if we wanted to mimic that over here and then spread it out, it's really pretty. Vibrant red. Just add in a little bit. But yeah. And then once this dries, you can even go in and add some gold lines to it. That would make a beautiful addition. So I've got so many different gold liner pens. This is just the one I have on my desk right now. I'll do it on this one first. So you can go in and put a beautiful line of gold in there and outline these. I also have this green glitter pen that I'm using. This pack comes with a bunch of different colors, but it's just a fun way to
elevate your painting. You obviously don't have to do this part, but I just wanted to show you some different ways. Maybe if you wanted to make these into greeting cards, you can sort of bedazzle them with some glitter or some metallic. It's up to you really, but yeah, I just enjoy this process a lot and it just looks so pretty. And now I'm just using a very fine line and I'm just going into each of my leaves and I'm just gonna create some final details in there. You don't need to do this part, but I just like to add the finishing touches once everything is dry. These are like a mix between a loose watercolor and a more detailed, so you can go and elevate this as much as you want. This is your painting. This is how you find your own unique style. So just practice, and just keep going. But anyways, I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something. I would love it if you liked and subscribed to my channel. That way you can see any other tutorials that I post on here. And speaking of, if you have anything that you'd like to learn, I'd so appreciate if you left it in the comments. I'm looking for any and all ideas. I've also included a printable PDF guide in the description below. It includes a complete list of the art supplies I used in this tutorial, color mixtures, line drawings, and the finished printable piece. So don't forget to grab that, and I will see you in our next tutorial. Thank you for watching and happy painting!